Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. In Beverly Hills, the morning sun reflected off the turquoise waters of the Sunset Waves Club's private pool. Palm trees swayed gently in the breeze, and the scent of exotic flowers wafted through the air. It was a place reserved for the elite, where each member seemed to believe the world belonged to them. Mark Whitman, a wealthy and influential man in his 50s, belonged to this elite. Tall, elegant, and always impeccably dressed, he wore a mixture of self-assurance and contempt on his face. He enjoyed looking down on others, imagining himself above the rules, above the law, above people. That morning, his gaze fell upon Jasmine Carter. A beautiful, calm black woman, swimming with grace. Her movements were fluid, measured, as if each stroke told a story. She paid no attention to the stares or the murmurs of those around her. She was there for herself, for her well-being, for her freedom. But for Mark, she was an intruder. His arrogance turned to irritation. How dare she? How dare she occupy this space that he believed belonged to him? He approached her, a cold and condescending smile on his face. "Madam, this pool is reserved for members of our club. You must leave." Jasmine looked at him calmly, a slight ironic smile on her lips. "I've been a member for 3 years, Mr. Whitman. I pay for it, just like you." Mark felt his anger rising. He couldn't stand being contradicted, especially by a woman he considered inferior. In his mind, there was only one solution: expel her immediately, to assert his power and remind everyone who was in charge here. But what he didn't know was that beneath this apparent vulnerability lay a quiet strength, ready to retaliate. And that on that day, his arrogance would soon turn against him in the most unexpected way. The pool at the Sunset Waves Club was buzzing with activity that morning. Some members were sunbathing on the lounge chairs, others were chatting over colorful cocktails served by the staff. The air was warm, thick with the scents of sunscreen and chlorine, and each burst of laughter seemed to echo louder than the last. Jasmine Carter was swimming peacefully, focused on her movements, when she felt a cold, penetrating gaze upon her. She stepped gently out of the water and saw Mark Whitman standing at the edge of the pool, hands on his hips, his face red with anger. "Mrs. Carter," he began, his voice icy but firm. "This pool is reserved for VIP members. You must leave immediately." Jasmine looked at him calmly, letting out a small, almost imperceptible sigh. "Mr. Whitman, I've been a VIP member for 3 years. I paid for this pool just like you." Mark narrowed his eyes. How dare she? In his mind, there was no doubt, she had to be expelled to remind him of her place. He signaled to 2 club employees, who approached quickly, hesitant. "Get her out now," he ordered, his voice barely betraying his anger. Jasmine looked at them, straight and proud, and said calmly, "You can't do that." The employees exchanged a worried glance. One of them murmured, "Mr. Whitman, she's right." Mark, red with rage, raised his voice even louder, "I don't want any excuses. Do as I say." At that moment, an eerie silence fell around the pool. The members present had stopped talking, some curious, others shocked. Jasmine dressed slowly, her movements measured and dignified. Every movement seemed to defy Mark, every glance she gave him a gentle slap to his pride. "Mr. Whitman," she said finally, in a clear and confident voice, "you may have money, but you don't have the right to humiliate others." Mark felt his hands tremble slightly. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. For the first time in a long time, he realized that his wealth and influence might not be enough to impose his will. But, stubborn and arrogant, he refused to admit it. He still believed he could extricate himself from this situation without losing face. And it was precisely this blind confidence that would soon plunge him into a series of events from which he would not easily recover. After the confrontation at the pool, Jasmine walked away slowly, her swimsuit still damp clinging to her skin, but her head held high and her determined gaze showed no trace of fear. Each step seemed to measure the dignity she refused to relinquish. Among the silent onlookers, Lisa Reynolds, an influential lawyer and Jasmine's close friend since college, watched the scene with a furrowed brow. She knew Mark Whitman for his legendary arrogance, but seeing him humiliate someone like this shocked her deeply. After the argument, Lisa approached Jasmine. "Are you going to be okay?" she asked, her voice soft but firm. Jasmine nodded, wiping the water from her face. "Thank you, Lisa. I'm fine. But I think we shouldn't let this go." Lisa agreed. "You're right. This guy thinks he can control everything. But he doesn't expect us to fight back." Together, they decided to act discreetly but effectively. Lisa began contacting journalists and influential contacts in the social and legal spheres, explaining the situation precisely. Jasmine, for her part, wrote a short statement for social media, detailing her experience with dignity and clarity. The story quickly spread throughout the club. Whispers turned into conversations, then into discussions on social media. Members present, some still incredulous, began to question Mark's behavior. Mark, for his part, naively thought it would all blow over. But as the messages and comments multiplied, he began to feel a slight tremor in his perfectly controlled world. Anonymous emails, discreet calls from partners and sponsors, all of it was beginning to undermine his carefully constructed image. Jasmine, aware of her quiet strength, refused to be intimidated. Every message of support she received reinforced her determination. She knew that true power lies not in money or status, but in courage and integrity. Mark, isolated in his office, observed the growing reactions on social media and in the press. For the first time in years, he felt a mixture of anger and anxiety. His arrogance and pride had just put him in a position of weakness. And so, without realizing it, he had triggered a domino effect that would soon turn his life upside down, revealing his true nature to everyone. A few days after the incident at the pool, Mark Whitman still believed he was in control. He thought the story would die down, that Jasmine would eventually fade into the shadow of his supposed power. He was sorely mistaken. Jasmine, with the discreet but powerful support of Lisa Reynolds, had begun to prepare a dignified and strategic response. They knew that a direct confrontation would not be effective against a man like Mark. They had to act intelligently, strike where he thought himself invincible, his reputation. That's how they organized a highly publicized charity event, under the pretext of a meeting to clear up misunderstandings at the club. The invitation was sent to Mark, who accepted without hesitation, convinced that his presence would be a sign of control and grandeur. On the day of the event, the room was filled with journalists, business partners, and influential members of the community. Mark arrived in an impeccable suit, a confident smile on his face, ready to demonstrate that he was above reproach. But no sooner had he crossed the threshold than the atmosphere changed. Lisa Reynolds stepped onto the stage, microphone in hand, and began to recount the incident with Jasmine at the pool, emphasizing Jasmine's dignity and Mark's arrogance. The room fell silent instantly. Murmurs turned into shocked and incredulous looks. Mark's partners exchanged embarrassed glances. The journalists frantically took notes. Jasmine, standing next to Lisa, looked Mark straight in the eyes. He felt, for the first time in a long time, the weight of public judgment. His arrogance, his contempt for others, his illusion of power, all of it crumbled before reality. Some sponsors and partners, who had previously remained silent, spoke out to distance themselves from Mark, fearing that his image would tarnish their own businesses. His name, associated with the scandal, began to lose all prestige. Mark, unable to speak, felt a wave of shame wash over him. Every word Lisa uttered was like a cruel reminder of his weakness and arrogance. And he understood, too late, that this forced humility was the price he had to pay for underestimating Jasmine Carter. Jasmine, calmly and with dignity, smiled slightly. She had won an important battle, proving that true power lies in courage and integrity, not in money or social status. Alone and humiliated, Mark left the event without a word, leaving behind a tarnished reputation and a lesson he would never forget. After the charity event, Mark Whitman returned home alone and silent. The limousine that had brought him to the venue was devoid of all illusions. The truth had just hit harder than he could have imagined. Every glance, every whisper from the audience, Every article posted on social media resonated in his mind like an echo of his own arrogance. There was no one to congratulate him, no one to applaud him. His business partners were distancing themselves, and even some longtime friends were beginning to turn their backs on him. Everything he had built on pride and contempt seemed to crumble in a matter of hours. Jasmine, for her part, continued her life serenely. She returned to the club's pool, but this time, she was applauded for her courage and dignity. The members who had once watched in silence were now filled with admiration. Smiles and signs of respect constantly greeted her. Mark, for his part, remained in his office, watching the phone and emails pile up. Each notification seemed to underscore his downfall: cancelled invitations, disgruntled partners, press articles criticizing his behavior. For the first time, he felt the bitterness of defeat, the kind that cannot be cured by money or power. He thought back to that morning at the pool, to Jasmine and her unwavering calm. He had thought that expelling a black woman from the pool would be a simple act of power. He understood too late that this act had been nothing more than a demonstration of his weakness and pettiness. In the silence of his office, he murmured to himself, "I've lost everything, and for what?" Jasmine, standing by the water, gazed at the horizon. She had transformed a potential humiliation into a silent victory, reminding everyone that true strength lies not in wealth or status, but in dignity and respect for others. And in this world where money and power often dominate, his courage remained as a timeless lesson. Blind arrogance always ends up turning against the one who carries it, while integrity triumphs, sometimes brilliantly and unexpectedly.